What if somewhere near you right now, something is being heated? Maybe it's a pan on a stove, maybe it's bread in a toaster, or a kettle clicking, or the smell of something roasting drifting down a hallway. That smell, the one that makes your mouth water before you've even seen the food, is so ordinary you've stopped noticing it. It is the background hum of human existence. And it is, when you actually stop and think about it, one of the strangest things any animal on Earth has ever done. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. No other animal cooks, not one. Out of the millions of species that have ever crawled, swum, flown, or slithered across this planet, exactly one takes its food, holds it over fire, waits, and then eats it. You, us, humans. What if every other creature alive, eats its food exactly as the world hands it to them? Raw, cold, bloody, whatever. The lion doesn't sear its steak. The chimpanzee doesn't toast its figs. The bear catching salmon in a river is not thinking about a nice sauce. They just eat. And we, the supposedly rational animal, are the one species that looked at a perfectly edible piece of food and thought, you know what this needs? Fire. This is the story of why humans cook. And it is a far bigger, far weirder, and far more important story than you have ever been told. Because cooking is not a lifestyle choice. It is not a cultural quirk. It is not something we do because we're fancy. Cooking might be the single reason you have the brain you're using to understand this sentence. What if cooking may have literally built the human being? And once you understand how, you will never look at a warm meal the same way again. Let's start with the obvious question everyone skips right past. What does cooking actually do to food? Because we treat it as flavor, as comfort, as tradition. But biologically, cooking is doing something profound. When you apply heat to food, you are in a very real sense beginning to digest it before it ever enters your body. Heat breaks down the tough structures in food that your teeth and stomach would otherwise have to fight through. It unravels proteins, a process called denaturing, making them dramatically easier for your body to break apart and absorb. What if it bursts open the starch granules in plants, a process called gelatinization, turning hard, indigestible carbohydrate into soft, energy-rich fuel your gut can actually use. Cooking softens, unlocks, and pre-processes. It does outside your body a huge amount of work that every other animal has to do inside theirs. And it does something else too, something easy to overlook. Cooking unlocks foods that would otherwise be useless or downright deadly. Plenty of plants defend themselves with toxins, and heat neutralizes many of them. Raw kidney beans, for example, contain a compound that can make you seriously ill, and cooking destroys it. Cassava, a staple that feeds hundreds of millions of people, is dangerously toxic in some varieties until it's processed and cooked. What if across the world, fire didn't just make existing food easier to eat, it expanded the menu, turning entire categories of plants that were poisonous or indigestible into safe, reliable calories. Cooking is a key that opens locks nature bolted shut, and that changes everything, because raw food, it turns out, is a terrible deal, not in taste, in energy. Let me explain what I mean, because this is the hinge the entire story turns on. Every animal is running a brutal daily math problem. It needs to take in more energy from food than it spends finding, chewing, and digesting that food. If the math comes out negative, you starve. Simple as that. And raw food is expensive on both ends. What if it takes enormous effort to chew, and even after all that chewing, your body only manages to extract a fraction of the energy locked inside it? Look at our closest living relatives to see just how brutal this is. A chimpanzee, an animal we share around 98% of our DNA with, spends roughly 6 hours a day chewing. 6 hours, just chewing. Sit with that. Imagine spending 6 hours of every single day, every day of your life, with your jaw grinding away at tough raw plants and the occasional piece of raw meat, because that is the only way to extract enough calories to stay alive. Great apes have enormous jaw muscles, huge flat molars, and long, complex digestive systems, specifically because raw food demands it. What if their guts are gigantic, coiled fermentation factories, working around the clock to squeeze energy out of material that fights back the entire way down? Now look at yourself. You have a tiny mouth, weak jaws, comparatively, small teeth, a short, simple gut compared to any ape your size. If you tried to survive the way a chimpanzee does, chewing raw leaves and stems for 6 hours a day, you would fail. Your equipment isn't built for it anymore. Somewhere along the way, the human body threw away the machinery for processing raw food, and it did that because it found something better. It found fire. Here's where the timeline gets genuinely staggering. To cook, you need controlled fire. Not a wildfire you run from, but a fire you make, keep, feed, and use on purpose. What if and the human relationship with fire is ancient, far older than our own species? There is evidence of controlled fire use going back hundreds of thousands, possibly over 1 million years. One of the most cited sites, Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, contains burnt bone and ash deep inside the cave in conditions that point to deliberate, contained fire roughly 1 million years ago. 1 million years, that is long before Homo sapiens existed. That was a different, earlier human ancestor sitting by a fire. And this is where a scientist named Richard Wrangham enters the story because he proposed something that reorganized how we think about human evolution entirely. It's called the cooking hypothesis, and the core idea is beautifully simple and slightly mind-bending. What if Wrangham argued that cooking didn't come after we became human? Cooking is part of what made us human in the first place. He points to a specific ancestor, Homo erectus, appearing roughly 1.9 million years ago. And Homo erectus is where the human body starts looking, well, human. Smaller teeth, smaller jaws, a smaller gut, a flatter face, and critically, a noticeably bigger brain than anything that came before. Now here's the puzzle. Those changes don't make sense for a raw food eater. Smaller teeth and a smaller gut are a catastrophic disadvantage if you're trying to process tough raw food. It's like firing half your factory workers and expecting more output. Unless the food had already been made easier to eat before it reached the mouth. Unless something was doing the pre-processing externally. Unless these ancestors had started cooking. The shrinking teeth, the shrinking gut, the whole redesign of the digestive system, Wrangham argues, are the fingerprints of a species that had outsourced a huge part of digestion to a fire. But the real payoff, the thing that makes this one of the most important ideas in human evolution, is what happened to the brain. And to understand it, you need to know one uncomfortable fact about your own head. Your brain is outrageously expensive. It makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it burns roughly 20% of your energy, even when you're doing absolutely nothing. Just sitting there, your brain is quietly consuming 1/5 of everything you eat. What if I2 is the most energy-hungry organ you own by a huge margin? And energy that expensive has to come from somewhere. This is where a brilliant idea called the expensive tissue hypothesis comes in, proposed by researchers Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler. Their observation was this. Both the brain and the gut are metabolically expensive organs, both hungry for a lot of energy. And in humans, as the brain grew dramatically larger over evolutionary time, the gut got dramatically smaller. It's almost as if the body made a trade. It shrank one expensive organ to afford another. It took the energy it used to spend running a massive raw food digestive system and redirected it into building and running a bigger brain. But you can only make that trade if you can shrink the gut without starving. What if I and you can only shrink the gut without starving? If your food has become so easy to digest that you no longer need the big one. In other words, cooking is what paid for the brain. Think about the sequence here because it's extraordinary. Fire makes food easier to digest. Easier digestion means you can survive with a smaller gut. A smaller gut frees up an enormous amount of energy. That freed up energy fuels a bigger, hungrier brain. And a bigger brain means more intelligence, better tools, better hunting, better firekeeping, and more cooking. It's a loop. What if a self-reinforcing spiral that feeds on itself, spinning upward across hundreds of thousands of years, and out the other end walks a creature with a brain 3 times the size of its ape cousins, capable of language, art, mathematics, and staring at a screen learning about why it can do any of this at all? There's a researcher named Susanna Herculano-Hosel who put a hard number on just how tight this constraint is. She studied how many neurons different primate brains contain, and how much energy those neurons cost to run. And her conclusion was stark. A primate trying to fuel a brain as large as ours on a raw diet alone would need to eat for something like 9 hours every single day. 9 hours of nonstop eating just to power the brain. That is not survivable. What if there aren't enough hours in the day? A great ape simply cannot eat enough raw food to run a human-sized brain. It's physically impossible on that diet. The only way to break through that ceiling, the only way to afford a brain this big, was to make food radically more energy-dense before eating it. And the tool that does exactly that is cooking. So let's pause and address the skeptic in the room, because there's an obvious objection and it deserves a real answer. What about raw meat? Couldn't our ancestors have just eaten a lot of raw meat and gotten enough energy that way without fire? It's a fair point. Meat is far more calorie-dense than leaves, but there are problems. Raw meat is still surprisingly hard for the human body to chew and digest efficiently. What if studies have shown that eating meat raw and whole, the human way, without the specialized teeth of a true carnivore, is genuinely difficult and energetically costly? Cooking meat makes it dramatically easier to chew and unlocks significantly more of its usable energy. And there's the small matter of everything trying to kill you. Raw meat carries parasites and dangerous bacteria. Heat destroys many of them. Cooking isn't just about calories, it's also one of the oldest forms of food safety in existence, quietly killing the things that would otherwise kill you. There's an even more direct piece of evidence, and it comes from modern people who choose to eat entirely raw. What if in a well-known study conducted in Germany, researchers examined people on strict long-term raw food diets, eating raw food with the full benefit of modern agriculture, blenders, dehydrators, imported fruit, and grocery stores full of high-calorie options our ancestors could only dream of. And the results were revealing. A large proportion of them were chronically underweight, and strikingly, a significant number of the women on these diets stopped menstruating entirely, a classic biological signal that the body is not getting enough energy to safely support reproduction. Let that sink in. Even with every advantage of the modern world, a purely raw diet left many people energy-starved. Now strip away the supermarkets and the blenders. What if I imagine trying to survive on raw food alone in the wild, as a hunter-gatherer? The conclusion is hard to escape. Humans are, in a very real sense, biologically dependent on cooking. We are not a species that can take it or leave it. We are a species that, somewhere along the line, became obligate cooks, committed to it, unable to easily go back. And here's a detail that drives the point home from the other direction. If cooking is so fundamental, do other apes have any interest in it at all? Researchers actually tested this with chimpanzees, and the results were surprising. Chimps, given the choice, prefer cooked food over raw. They'll wait for it. What if in clever experiments, chimpanzees even showed they were willing to hold onto a piece of raw food and carry it across a room to a device they believed would cook it, rather than just eating it immediately? They grasped at some level that raw food could be transformed into something better, and they were willing to delay eating to get it. What they lack is the one thing we have, the ability to reliably make and control fire. The desire for cooked food may be older than humanity. The power to actually produce it is what set us apart. That word, dependent, is worth sitting with because it flips the whole story. We tend to think of cooking as something clever we invented, a nice bonus on top of being human, but the truth might be the reverse. Cooking may have invented us. What if the human body, did not develop cooking as a luxury? The human body developed around cooking as a necessity, reshaping teeth, jaws, guts, and brains under the assumption that food would arrive pre-softened by fire. We didn't adapt cooking to fit our bodies. Our bodies adapted to fit cooking. And once that happened, there was no going back. A creature that has thrown away its big gut and its powerful jaws in exchange for a fire-dependent digestive shortcut cannot simply return to eating raw. The bridge is burned, literally. Now, it's worth being honest here, because science is a conversation, not a verdict. The cooking hypothesis is influential, but it is not universally settled. The single biggest point of debate is timing. What if Wrangham's theory needs controlled cooking fires to be common by around 1.9 million years ago, when Homo erectus appears with its small teeth and big brain? But hard, undisputed archaeological evidence of habitual controlled fire only becomes really solid much later, a few 100,000 years ago rather than nearly 2 million. Fire is frustratingly hard to trace in the deep past. Ash and charcoal scatter, wash away, and vanish over such immense stretches of time. So some researchers argue the body changes came first, driven by other factors like eating more meat or simply pounding and slicing raw food with stone tools to make it easier to chew. And that widespread cooking came a bit later. It's a genuinely open question. But even the skeptics agree on the destination. What if whether it happened at 1.9 million years or later, the arc is the same. At some point, processing food outside the body, and above all cooking it, became central to who we are. The debate is about the exact date, not the ending. Because the ending is undeniable. Look around at humanity today and try to find a single culture anywhere on Earth, in any climate, at any point in recorded history, that eats all of its food raw. You won't find one. Not in the Arctic, not in the tropics, not in the desert, not on any island. Every human society that has ever been documented cooks, every single one. Fire and cooked food are cultural universals, as fundamental to being human as language itself. That is not a coincidence. That is not a shared fashion that happened to spread everywhere. What if that is a biological inheritance so deep it predates the split of humanity into different peoples spreading across the globe? We all cook because we were all already cooking before we ever went our separate ways. And there's a beautiful, quieter dimension to this too. Cooking didn't just change our bodies, it changed our lives. Think about what cooking requires. It requires a fire. It requires the fire to be tended. It requires food to be gathered, brought back, and prepared in one place. And so cooking created something that had never really existed before in the animal world. A gathering point, a hearth, a place to come back to. When you eat raw, you eat as you go alone wherever you find your food. What if but when you cook, you carry food back? You sit together, you wait together while it cooks, and you eat together. The campfire is arguably the first kitchen, the first dining table, and the first living room all at once. Some anthropologists argue this is where storytelling was born, where language deepened, where the tight social bonds that define human groups were forged. In the flickering downtime around a fire, waiting for food to be ready, with nothing to do but talk. We didn't just cook food over those fires, we cooked culture. And notice what cooking handed back to us. Time. A chimpanzee spends 6 hours a day chewing. Modern humans spend closer to 1. Cooking didn't just feed the brain, it freed the hours. What if all those hours no longer spent grinding raw plants between your molars, became hours available for something else entirely? For making tools, for planning hunts, for teaching children, for talking, for thinking. An animal that suddenly has 5 extra waking hours a day, every day for millions of years, is an animal with room to become something new. Fire didn't only change what we ate, it changed what we could do with the rest of our lives. So let's zoom all the way out. Because the story of cooking is really the story of a trade so profound it rewrote what a human is. Our ancestors, without any idea what they were doing, without any plan, stumbled into using fire on their food. What if I, and that single behavior repeated across countless generations, quietly reached into their bodies and began rearranging them? It shrank the teeth. It shrank the gut. It freed the energy. It grew the brain. It bought the intelligence that would go on to invent everything else: agriculture, cities, writing, science, the very concept of asking why we cook in the first place. Every thought you have ever had was, in a sense, powered by a fire your ancestors lit almost 2 million years ago and never let go out. There is something almost dizzying about that. What if the most ordinary thing you do all day, warming up food, is a thread that runs unbroken back through nearly 2 million years of human existence, back past cities, past farming, past our own species, back to a small, big-jawed ancestor crouched by a fire in the African night, doing the strangest and most important thing any animal has ever done: cooking dinner. So the next time you smell something in the oven, or hear the sizzle of a pan, or wrap your hands around a warm bowl on a cold day, remember what that actually is. It isn't just comfort. It isn't just flavor. You're performing the oldest, deepest, most defining ritual of your entire species. You're doing the one thing that no other animal on Earth does. What if you're doing the thing that built your brain, that fed your ancestors, that gathered your people around a fire for 100,000 nights? You are cooking. And in the whole vast history of life on this planet, you are still the only one who does. Enjoy your meal. It is stranger and older and more miraculous than you ever knew.